South Korea's industrial production was down last month, another sign the economy is slowing down. It declined pretty much across the board, and in cars especially. And markets are closed here in Korea on this Friday, so we'll take a look back at the week in business and finance with an expert. It's 4 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. Presidents Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump will be sitting down on April 11th in Washington to discuss North Korea's denuclearization and their alliance. It seems President Moon might again be playing mediator as the allies look for a breakthrough. Shin Se-min reports.
President Moon Jae-in will be traveling to Washington in 2 weeks for a summit meeting with President Trump on North Korea nuclear diplomacy. They'll be sitting down on April 11th for their 7th such meeting, but their first since the breakdown of President Trump's Hanoi summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The South Korean presidential office says President Moon will be working to strengthen his country's alliance with Washington and much more.
The leaders of the two sides will hold in-depth discussions on matters to strengthen the bilateral alliance and to coordinate their positions on establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula through complete denuclearization.
And that same schedule was reiterated and confirmed by the White House, saying that the alliance between the two sides remains the linchpin of peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and in the region, and added that the visit by President Moon will strengthen the alliance and friendship between the two sides. Their summit meeting was first proposed during a phone conversation the leaders had as Trump was leaving Hanoi, and the two agreed to talk issues related to North Korea over lunch. More details about the upcoming summit are likely to be settled on in the coming days. For one, the presidential office says a senior national security official, Ryu Hyun-jin, will be visiting the White House next week. Hopes are high that the weeks of behind-the-scenes discussions by the two Koreas and the U.S. have helped get nuclear diplomacy going again, led by the initiator of the peace drive on the Korean Peninsula, President Moon. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And as that summit between the allies draws closer, the two sides' top diplomats will be meeting in Washington in about 24 hours. U.S. officials are sounding positive overall about North Korea, saying that China is basically on board as well. Kim Mo-gyun reports.
The United States says that it's positive about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un returning to the negotiating table for talks on denuclearization. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, the U.S. State Department's deputy spokesperson, Robert Palladino, reaffirmed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's words that Washington is still optimistic, adding that diplomacy with North Korea will continue to move forward. Palladino also touched upon U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun's latest visit to China, confirming that Washington and Beijing are engaging in regular discussions on North Korea as they share the same goal of a final, fully verified denuclearization of the regime. When asked whether Biegun came to contact with any North Korean official during his visit, Palladino stopped short of saying that Washington and Pyongyang are still negotiating and didn't provide any details. Regarding concerns over the possibility that Beijing could backslide from sanctions enforcement, he stressed that China's enforcement has been very helpful, but added that there is still room for China to contribute more. Meanwhile, South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa has left for Washington to meet her counterpart Mike Pompeo on Friday afternoon local time for their first face-to-face since the Hanoi summit broke down last month. The two were expected to share their perspectives on the issue as well as inter-Korean cooperation in sanctions enforcement. South Korea's top nuclear envoy Lee Do-hun, who also left for Washington, is slated to meet with Biegun after the foreign ministerial talks. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
And the U.S. State Department says the North Korean regime is responsible for the death of Otto Warmbier, the American college student who died 2 years ago after being held prisoner by the North. But it's not saying whether it blames Kim Jong-un personally. In a regular press briefing on Thursday, Deputy Spokesperson Robert Palladino said Washington has been explicit in its human rights report and has spoken out about these topics often. But he declined to say more about Warmbier's case. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was asked the same question the previous day at a House hearing. Pompeo refused to answer directly, calling the question a political football. Most of North Korea's staff have now returned to the Inter-Korean Contact Office at the border after they were abruptly pulled out a week ago. Seoul's Unification Ministry says since Thursday there have been about 9 North Korean officers working at the Joint Liaison Office, an increase from the 5 seen earlier in the week. Before the withdrawal, the North had 10 officers there. Despite their return, the South and North Korean ministers at the office did not meet face-to-face this morning. That's because the North's minister did not show up, and the deputy minister has been absent since mid-March. The meeting is supposed to happen every Friday, but it hasn't since late last month. In other news, early voting is underway in 2 by-elections in South Korea set for April 3rd. Up for grabs are National Assembly seats in the districts of Changwon, Seongsan and Tongyeong, Goseong. Voters can cast their ballots at polling stations today and Saturday between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. The by-elections will serve as a litmus test for the parties in Gyeongsang-Namdo province ahead of next year's general elections. A poll in mid-March showed the main opposition Liberty Korea Party and the minor Progressive Justice Party are neck and neck in the race for the Changwon-Seongsan district. But the Justice Party might get a boost having run a unified candidate with the ruling Democratic Party. The same poll showed the Liberty Korea Party candidate in a comfortable lead in the other constituency. In Major League Baseball, the Korean monster pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin of the LA Dodgers started the new season on Thursday with a win. Won Jung-hwan reports.
South Korean pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin started on the mound against the Arizona Diamondbacks on Thursday, marking the end of Clayton Kershaw's 8-season opening day starting streak for the LA Dodgers. And Ryu got off a winning start, making him the first South Korean pitcher in 18 years to win on the opening day of the MLB season. The last time a Korean pitcher tasted victory on the opening day was back when Park Chan-ho won with the Texas Rangers in 2002. Against the Diamondbacks at Dodger Stadium, Ryu Hyun-jin gave up just 1 run in 6 innings, getting 8 strikeouts to help the Dodgers win 12-5 in their opening game. After throwing 6 solid innings in the game, he said he felt 0 pressure. The 31-year-old is hoping to have a healthy season this year after missing 3 months with a groin injury in 2018. Meanwhile, Ryu's teammates made the Dodgers' victory even more memorable on Thursday as they set the record for the most home runs in an opening day game. The 8 home runs also tied a team record for homers in a game which was set back in 2002. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
More data pointing to a slowdown in the South Korean economy. Last month, industrial output declined across all sectors, including production, consumption, and investment. Kim Da-mi tells us why.
South Korea's overall industrial output tumbled 1.9% in February, mainly due to lower production in the automobile and the services sectors. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Friday, this is the sharpest all-month decline in almost 6 years. For instance, both the output of cars and production in the service sector declined in February from a month earlier by 3.2% and 1.1% respectively. Retail sales, an indicator of consumption, edged down 0.5%. Despite an increase in clothing sales, falling sales of food and beverages, as well as lower auto sales, led to the overall decline in retail sales. Facility investment showed the biggest slump out of all sectors at almost 10.5%. The on-month drop mainly came from decreased investment in machinery and transport equipment. Experts note that a high base effect in January led to last month's overall decline in industrial output. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
For the first time, South Korea has released the records of its interventions in the foreign exchange market as part of efforts to improve transparency. The Bank of Korea put the data on its website just minutes ago at 4 p.m. local time. Visitors can look up the net amount of U.S. dollars bought and sold by Korea's currency authorities in the second half of last year. The central bank will release the data on the first half of 2019 in September. The U.S. and the IMF have continuously demanded that Korea release its currency market records on a regular basis to commit to a flexible exchange rate. Last October, the U.S. Treasury's semi-annual report kept South Korea on its monitoring list. General Motors Korea has signed an initial deal to sell off the plant in Gunsan that it shut down. Parts maker MS Autotech, which is part of the consortium buying the plant, says it plans to turn it into a parts factory to produce electric vehicles. The firm is a major subcontractor of Hyundai Motor. The acquisition price was not made public, but it reportedly could reach up to $176 million. The plant was shut down last May as part of GM's plan to reorganize their global strategy due to a low utilization rate. The South Korean government will be drawing up a supplementary budget to provide support for the city of Pohang, which was hit about a year and a half ago by an earthquake. The decision was reached on Friday during a three-way meeting between the ruling Democratic Party, the government, and the presidential office. The government is expected to submit an extra budget bill to the National Assembly in April at the earliest, which will also include a chunk to fight the country's fine dust air pollution. In November 2017, a magnitude 5.4 quake hit Pohang, leaving dozens of people injured and thousands of homes damaged. The three sides also agreed to push to enact a special law to designate the quake as a special disaster, to stipulate more support measures and provide for fact-finding. They're also seeking to create a special parliamentary committee made up of lawmakers from multiple parties to deal with the quake's aftermath. South Korea is headed for a demographic cliff as more and more people choose not to start families. A new projection suggests the population will actually start to fall 3 years sooner than previously thought, as our Ko Ryun-hee reports.
When will South Korea's population start to fall? That's been the big question since at least the 1980s, when data started showing a low birth rate. On Thursday, Statistics Korea released a population projection for the 50 years between 2017 and 2067 that says it'll likely start in 2029. In 2028, the population is set to peak at around 51.9 million and start to decrease the year after. These projections were based on analysis of data including births, deaths, and international migration. And they assume a scenario of moderate growth, meaning that total fertility, life expectancy, and international migration were all in a medium range. The decline starting in 2029 is 3 years sooner than projected in the last report in 2016, and this is mainly due to fewer women having babies. An expert in the field pointed to various reasons why young people aren't starting families.
To survive in a highly competitive society, many young Koreans get private education or go to the so-called good universities. But even if you do that, there's still the problem of unemployment. Also, there are many couples who both work, but whose jobs don't provide enough support like parental leave.
The report also pointed out Korea's rapidly aging society. The population of seniors 65 or older is projected to rise from last year's 7.4 million to around 18.3 million. To turn around this demographic slide, the government announced the same day that it will create a task force next month and come up with a policy response. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. Consumer Reports has named Samsung's Galaxy S10 Plus as the best smartphone in its category. That model, plus Apple's iPhone XS Max and Samsung's Galaxy S10 rounded out the top three. The Galaxy S10 Plus won high scores thanks to its long battery life, its durability, camera quality, and overall reliability. It has a battery life of 39 hours and 30 minutes, a full 8 hours longer than the previous chart topper, the Samsung Galaxy Note 9. The British government has confirmed that UK lawmakers will vote on British Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal for a third time on Friday. Hong Yu has the details.
March 29th was the original date set for the UK to leave the EU. But for now, it will be the day that UK lawmakers put Prime Minister May's Brexit deal with the European Union to a vote for the third time. If May deal is approved, the UK will exit the bloc on May 22nd, but the Parliament will have to work on the domestic ratification requirements. If the withdrawal agreement does not pass this week, the UK will have to participate in European Parliament elections as a condition of an extension beyond April 12th. On Wednesday, May told MPs she would step down as Prime Minister if they backed her deal. May's announcement came after her advisors said her resignation was the only way to get enough votes to pass the deal, as many Conservatives have been frustrated with her leadership and say a new leader is needed to lead the next phase of talks with the EU. But the third vote is unlikely to be successful, as May and her supporters will have to change the minds of 75 MPs. The debate at the House of Commons will begin on Friday 9:20 a.m. local time. The crucial vote will proceed around 5 hours later. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
And it's time now for an in-depth look at the market action today and for the week. And for that, I'm joined by Dr. Kim Se-wan, Professor of Economics at Ewha Women's University. Thanks, Dr. Kim, for making time this afternoon.
My pleasure.
Well, it's Friday here and the markets are closed. The Kospi just about even for the week.
Right.
There's still one more trading day in America and in Europe, but now here on Friday, where do we stand?
Well, South Korean equity market had one of the worst market in a year because on daily basis, the market return has been dropped over 2% on Monday, which is March 25th of this week. So I can see that the fears on global recession is rising very quickly. For example, U.S. economic growth has been dropped to 1% level from previous 2%, and Chinese economy has been slowing down too. Their economic growth will be 5% level from 6% level. So in addition to that, South Korean export is kind of declining these days, thanks to dropping demand for semiconductors and its price. And the importance of the semiconductor is very huge in South Korean export because that covers over 20% of the total export. Given these difficult situations, the long-term interest rate of the United States, which is believed the most significant forecaster of the future recession, has been dropped. So we see that triggered further stock market drops all over the world, including South Korea. So South Korea is not independent from global financial market.
Certainly not. You unpacked, you mentioned a lot of issues there, going back to last Friday's when the recession issue really hit the U.S. market, and then that carried over into Korea this week.
Exactly.
What do you think about that risk, the inverted yield curve? Is that exaggerated?
Not really. We believe that there is a certain reason for declining yield curve. Based on common sense, short-term interest rate should be higher than that of the long-term interest rate because in the long run we are faced more risk and uncertainties. However, dropping long-term interest rate, which is made by all participants of the financial market, is very important signal for the forthcoming recession of the market.
Looking forward this year, do you think is there a particular quarter that might see a trough and then a sort of a recovery?
It is pretty much believed that in the U.S. economy is not recovering that fast. That's the reason why Federal Reserve of the United States decided not to increase federal fund rate this time.
Yeah.
So market and myself believe that there is very low possibility that Federal Reserve is increasing interest rate by the end of this year, like 2019, because they believe that they are facing another recession possibilities.
Well, let's go back to the Korean markets in particular this week. A major issue with the shareholders' meetings, several companies. We saw in particular the shareholders of Korean Air were able to get rid of their long-serving chairman in really a landmark vote. Haven't seen this happen before in Korea. SK Group, a different case, their board survived the vote. But run us through that story. The National Pension Service was a major player here.
Right. So I just said, for the first time in history, National Pension Service exercised their voting power to exile the head of the private corporation from board of directors. So I think Mr. Cho's case is kind of welcomed by the market because the Korean Air's stock price has been increased quickly after that exile. And in addition, that is pretty much acceptable by Korean people because kind of huge anger has been accumulated because of his family's misdemeanors and scandals these days. But natural further question goes like, is it really MPS has the independence from political power, like President of the Nation and Congress of the nation, and they have something professionalism to predict whether something event has a power on MPS stock returns and investment? The answer is kind of negative still. So we have to watch how MPS, National Pension System, is playing a role in equity market for trying to control the ownership of the private corporations.
Yeah, a really big move. Was there, obviously the most high profile one was the Korean Air case. Was there any of the other ones that stuck out to you?
Well, actually that is really a sensitive economic and political issue together because National Pension Service, the owner of almost 300 largest corporations in South Korea. Yeah. So if they believe that there is a specific company that is not fully understandable business and management, it is pretty much positive they will attack on their ownership. So next target will be many candidates. Yes.
Yeah, very interesting case there. The first of the family-run chaebos to have their chairman of the board, family member, kicked out.
Right.
But now, in the region, we've got the U.S. and China holding their trade talks today. There's a lot riding on that. A lot of Asian markets watching that, Korea included, America included. Stock markets are sensitive to this. What do you think are the possible outcomes, and what would the reaction be?
Actually, the two summits of United States and China are supposed to meet 2 weeks ago at the private resort of President Trump in Florida, United States. But that has been canceled because the details of the agreements between the two countries were not cleared out. So media is saying that there are 6 specific items, like a memorandum of understanding between the two countries. So 6 items goes like the service sector, agriculture of China, and technological transfer between two countries, and intellectual property. So out of 6 items of the MOUs between the two countries, 2 items can't be accepted by China, like transfer of technology and intellectual property. So if
China does not accept those?
No, never. Because if that is accepted by Chinese government, it is pretty sure that Chinese products export price will be increased over 20%. So who's going to buy a Chinese product with 20% higher price in the global market? So with that circumstances, Chinese government is really suspecting that U.S. is dismantle the future potential of Chinese economy and the Chinese future as a whole. So therefore, it is pretty sure that they can accept the 2 items. Instead, Chinese government approach is really different from that of the United States. They are saying that we are going to make the zero trade deficit, a trade surplus with the United States until 2025 without 6 MOUs with United States.
Well, we should know something about that meeting, I guess, in the next 24 hours or so. And everybody will be watching that, including us on this show. Dr. Kim, thanks for making time for us this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. That's our market wrap-up for the week, something we'll be doing every Friday on this show. And we hope you will join us next time as well. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thanks very much for being with us. More news updates coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time. Bye for now.